For $55.99, you can pick up this, the Eride Pro SR. Now, Eride claims that this thing has a peak power of 25 kilowatts and top speed of 70 mile an hour with the 58-tooth sprocket. God, it's windy. I feel like a fucking weatherman right now, dude. What's crazy to me is that it was only like 2 years ago when you had to spend upwards 10 grand on your bike to get anything close to this kind of power. And now brands like Eride and Altis are selling bikes with this kind of power for very reasonable prices. So how do we get here? Basically, it all began when the original Eride Pro SS burst on the scene back in 2023. With its 72-volt 40-amp-hour battery and a claimed peak power of 12 kilowatts, it simply gave people what they wanted. A bike you didn't have to drop thousands on to get it to go slightly faster than 45 mile an hour. And within a matter of months, it basically threw Sauron out the ring and clinched title as king of suburban rich kid hooligan bike. And for the following year, they released the Eride Pro 2.0 with similar success, and things were going great. But then in late 24, a strange company named Altis came out with a faster, stronger, but slightly heavier 98-volt alternative with the Altis Sigma. Eride was stunned, but every good story needs a great rivalry. Now, much like the Japanese superbike industry back in the late 90s, these Chinese lightweight electric dirt bike manufacturers are in an all-out power war. They're basically racing to see who can make the most powerful and the cheapest electric dirt bike they can, and shit, I'm all here for it. Now, as someone who has ridden both the Altis Sigma and now this, the Eride Pro SR, I have lots of thoughts and opinions, which will require you watching the whole video. I also really need the watch time, so it'd be greatly appreciated. In this video, I took the SR up both my fast and technical trail, as well as a comparative test ride between this and my modified Eride Pro SS 1.0. And then at the end, we'll talk some pros and cons, some things I liked and didn't like, as well as make some comparative points with some of its competition. But first, let's talk about some specs. Like I mentioned, this bike features a 72-volt 50-amp-hour battery, which adds up to around 3,600 watt-hours. Now, this is slightly higher than the Altis Sigma's battery, which is a 98-volt 35-amp-hour, and that adds up to around 3,430 watt-hours. The SR also has a slightly higher peak power, coming in at 25 kilowatts, whereas the Altis Sigma has a claimed 22.5. Now, a bigger battery obviously means more weight, and this one comes in at a whopping 48.6 pounds. Much like the Altis, you're able to tune controller settings using Eride's app. However, as far as I can see, you can't directly tune anything on the bike itself through the interface, which is something I would definitely like to see. Now, off-road riding was obviously the main focus for the SR, as you can tell by the 19x18 setup. You're also getting these nice fat knobbies, nothing name brand, just the typical Chinese brand, but obviously I'd swap out to some better tires. You're also getting these big oversized foot pegs, which make a huge difference. I like those a lot. Getting a 58-tooth sprocket at the back for more acceleration. Obviously, if you want high top speed, swap to something smaller. However, one downside with this bike in particular is that it's a demo bike. So these tires have a bit of the old Dr. Phil going on with them. All bold right in the middle.
Bullshit!
Like, look at that, man. I'm gonna get nothing but wheel spin on this thing. Another great feature with the SR are the .4 brakes. I'm definitely happy these manufacturers are going with these brakes now instead of the typical mineral oil mountain bike stuff that we're all used to. You get a total of 4 riding modes: Eco, Sport, Race, as well as Reverse. The SR features Fast A suspension, which is apparently an upgrade, but I've got my thoughts and opinions about them. We'll talk more on that later. Like I mentioned, this is the demo bike, and with the factory bike, I think at least the first or second batch or so, they're gonna come with a longer seat, kind of similar to the Sauron Ultra B. And finally, the overall claimed weight is around 183 pounds, which I believe is a little bit lighter than the Sigma. At least it feels a little bit lighter. But anyway, that's enough about the specs. Let's hop on the bike and take it for a ride. God, this thing's quick. They were not kidding. It's like, I'm just trying to manage that wheel spin. That's like nothing I've ridden before. Whoa! God, I just sound like I fell out of an airplane right there. Sorry, guys. That's so much power. Shit. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but I'm not actually getting any traction. That's just all wheel spin. Woo! That's a lot. That's a lot of power. Oh, bush. Whoops. All right, I never thought I would say this, but I'm taking it out of race mode. That is just too much power. It's just, It's just almost too much going on right there. God, it's whoa, woo! Dot 4 brakes are doing the best they can. Now, unfortunately, like I mentioned, the back tire is a little bit bald. Therefore, I don't have all the traction. I definitely need more because this thing is just spinning its wheels like a fucking lunatic. Alright, sorry if I was swearing and screaming and not talking much. They said this thing was a handful and they were right, dude. Whatever demon they summoned and put in this bike, go back to purgatory. That was probably the fastest I've ever done that trail before. On the downside, I did notice one thing, and that is the throttle curve. All of the power seems to be at the very end of the throttle rotation. Now that's not too big of a problem on this trail, but when we get to my more technical trail coming up next, that is going to be an issue. Now you can download an app and adjust several parameters inside the controller, but yeah, that's something I've noticed already that's going to need some adjusting. Okay, now a big question I'm going to definitely see a lot in the comment section of this video is how does this thing compare to the Altis Sigma? Now I also do bike reviews on a channel called Rider Guide. Some of you may know that, some of you may not. But I did test ride the Altis Sigma on that channel, so you can go check out my video over there. I'll have a link down below. Now this bike and the Altis have very similar power. The one thing I liked about the Altis was its throttle curve. It was very predictable, very user-friendly, irregardless of just the enormous amounts of power it has. However, on the downside, I found the Altis to be a little bit cramped, whereas this bike does definitely not have that problem. I'm about 5'10", 5'11", depending on how I'm feeling that day, and this thing is a very good fit for me. It feels slightly larger than the stock Eride. I think it might be the suspension or the handlebars this thing has, but overall, it feels very, very familiar to the other bikes. God, that is so powerful. Oh my God, this kid's on a field trip. I wonder if they'll wave at me. How's it going? Enjoy nature. Bunch of kids on a field trip, that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was a cult for a second, but... Alright, so, I got this thing back in race mode. Let's do a little high-speed stability test. God, this thing just kicks out on you, it's crazy. Woo-hoo! God, that is so fast. I'm not sure how fast that is. I wasn't looking at the speedo. I'd say that's gotta be about 65, maybe a little bit quicker than that. All right, time for the technical trail. I'm gonna drop it in sport mode. It's just more manageable. All right, here we go. God, this thing is such a handful. Now, when I tested the Altis Sigma, it had a hard time because it is a bit heavier. I think that weighs around 180 pounds. This is kind of similar. But God, the power is just... It's almost too much power for a trail like this. If I had a better tire, it'd be slightly more manageable, but it's just spinning and kicking and launching the front in the air. All right, I'm gonna stop talking. I gotta focus. Not bad, but man, this thing is a handful. If the throttle was just a bit more manageable throughout the rotation, it'd be a bit easier, but like, man, that tire's just spinning. Front wheel is kicking up. Okay, let's go back down the technical trail, see how it handles. Now, this bike is about 180 pounds, not too much heavier than the stock one. I think about 20 pounds heavier than the regular Eride Pro SS. But let's just see. The power's just crazy, dude. This is where the dot 4 brakes are really gonna come into their own. I gotta watch the throttle on this because it will just pick up so much speed. I don't know, fly up this mountain. Do I sound scared? I think I'm kind of scared. But I am loving the riding position and ergonomics on this bike. So good, the front is pretty predictable. I'd say overall riding position, ergonomics wise compared to the Altis Sigma, I would prefer this. But so far so good, feels good. Suspension is a little firm for my liking. God, this trail's so rutted out now. And we're down, almost there, slow down. Whew. Crazy. It almost accelerates faster than I can think. Maybe I'm just not a very good rider. Now then, who is this bike for? Well, if you're a suburban, if you're a suburban dad, I would not recommend buying this for your eager 14-year-old son. This is just too much of a handful, man. This is for the experienced guys. Ah, you see how much this thing just fights me? It's crazy. I never thought I'd be saying this, man, but it it almost has too much power. Riding this thing, man, it makes you feel like you're in like a mosh pit, like a knock loose show. You're just gonna get smacked. Some software right here, let's kick it up. The thing is just sliding on me. God damn this. I've been riding this thing for like the past hour. I still can't get over just how intense that power is. So in other news, hope you guys are enjoying the new channel. I've got quite a few reviews down below if you want to go check them out on some other bikes. For those who don't know, I have another channel called Hammy Moto that I've had for a long time, but I decided to start over with something fresh, Hammy POV, and we're doing all kinds of fun stuff with this channel. So please subscribe. It's kind of hard to talk and ride this bike at the same time. It's just, you gotta focus. All right, we are back to the start. All right, 21% battery. Let's see what I got on the Strava. Not bad, not bad. This thing is crazy. Not sure how many times I said that in this video. Take a shot every time I said this thing is 1, crazy, or 2, a handful. Okay, 23 miles. I'm at 21%, mostly in sport mode, a little bit of race mode as well, tons of full throttle. I've done quite a bit of mileage. I'd say 21% with the kind of riding up and doing. That's not too bad. I would actually say that's slightly better than expected. But obviously if you ride this thing in eco mode and in sport mode and a bit more casually, then yeah, you'll be able to really squeeze some good mileage out of it. The following day, I compared the SR next to my modified Eride Pro SS 1.0 in a straight line speed test as well as a short loop in the trails. My Eride Pro SS has an aftermarket EBMX 9000 controller as well as some Tusk ground wire off-road tires. I haven't done any modifications to the battery or the motor, and everything else that I've done to it is mostly cosmetic. Alright, so if I win this, I get the $20 I gave you for gas money back.
Okay.
And your PS5.
Okay.
Alright, okay.
Stupid idiot. I got a PS4. What do you think? Should I leave it in 1?
No, put it in 3. I'm in race mode. Okay. Ready, steady, go! Woo!
Dude, that didn't even feel like I tried. We gotta do that one again for sure.
You didn't try that time?
I didn't
Okay.
even feel like that was like a competition. That thing just fucked off.
You sound like a kid who just lost at Mario Kart.
Oh, one more time.
Oh, fucking asshole.
This is probably the only way I can win against him. Yeah, I just gotta cheat a little bit. See? Look at this.
Yeah, this is so much faster than that bike. I did forget to mention that this bike does have the EBMX 9000 controller, which actually increased the power by 50% from the stock controller. So that is not a slow bike at all.
It's not.
That's actually a very, very quick
Racing
bike.
against that, it feels slow.
Yeah.
It feels like it's doing nothing.
For sure. All right, well, let's take it in the trails and see how it performs. All right, so I'm going to ride my modified 1.0 on a quick little track, see how it is. Then we're going to try it on the SR. Tell you what, one of the best modifications I did to this bike was definitely getting that EBMX 9000 controller. What a difference it made. And now I've got these Tusk ground wire tires on there. They make a big difference too, especially when it comes to just digging in. Getting all this traction. Feels so good. I do love this bike a lot. It's just probably the last of its kind from now on. The last of the truly lightweight e-bikes. So, feels good to be back on it. Woo! Okay, now back on the SR 71. And what's crazy is that when you get back on this thing compared to that bike, it feels bigger. It feels like the front is taller and the pegs are lower. Oh yeah, now we're on them. God, I'm immediately less confident now I'm on this thing again. But that power is just fucking crazy. All right, so in the deep stuff here, dancing through it. God, it's just like, it accelerates faster than like, oh, I don't know, man. Getting that throttle in, and obviously with a better back tire, this will be so much better. Overall, man, the difference in feeling between these two is pretty dramatic. I feel like this would be great at a track, and it's even good on these trails, but I feel like that bike, because it is less powerful and just a bit lighter, it's just more manageable and a little bit more fun on these types of trails. Okay, so what I'm gonna try and do is do what I can to maybe try and fix the throttle. Now, I did let Eride know about this problem, and they said that in the new update that are gonna be coming out for customer versions of this bike, the throttle would have been fixed. But I don't know, I haven't tested that bike. But that is one of my biggest complaints with this thing, and I'm going to try to get to the bottom of it because you do have a lot of adjustability in this controller. So let's walk through it. Starting from the top, you have all the sensors that you can turn on and off. A lot of people turn off the brake sensor, which it already is. Tilt sensor, I would turn off as well. Kickstand sensor, I don't mind that one so much. Unless it does start, kicking down after some heavy jumps, then I would turn it off, but otherwise, I don't mind it. It's a bit of extra added safety. First thing that a lot of people do when they're not used to these bikes is walk up to them and twist the throttle. Okay, now thankfully this bike has a park mode, so when you knock down the kickstand, it goes into park, so that's unlikely to happen, but that's why I'm gonna leave the kickstand sensor on. So there's an option here that Eride did tell me about. It says street tune and trail tune. Let's turn that off, and now I have much less adjustability. If I turn that on, I have far more, as you can see. So sport mode acceleration and race mode acceleration. When I first got this bike, the race mode acceleration was set to 100. Which meant that the second you turn the throttle, it launches into a backflip. And I almost went right into my pickup truck in the driveway. So I lowered that down to 15%. I think it does need to come up a bit more. At the moment, sport mode is in 17. I did adjust that a little bit as well because, again, the problem I keep having is that all the power is at the very final end of the rotation of the throttle, which just makes it a bit difficult to ride. I don't see any throttle recurve settings like that. This is the kind of stuff you come to expect in, say, the EBMX 9000 that's in my personal Eride Pro. I love that controller, man. The amount of adjustability on that thing is amazing. This has something similar, not quite as many options as the EBMX 9000, but plenty to go in and mess with. So let's see if I increase the acceleration in sport mode up to 23%. I don't want to go full wide open because that leaves everything right at the very initial entry of the throttle. So let's crank that up and see if that makes a difference. So let's start up with the pros. Obviously, the biggest pro with this bike is all that power that you're getting on tap for the price. It's pretty amazing. The first time you ride this bike with a fully charged battery in race mode and you pin it full throttle, I swear to God, you hear the fucking guitar solo from Freebird come on. It's like nothing I've ridden in this class before. Now that being said, there are obviously faster electric dirt bikes out there like the Stark Fog and the brand new Ventus 1, which has a claimed 28 kilowatts peak power, but I haven't ridden those bikes, so we're not gonna talk about them. Basically, in a scale of 1 to 10 on the holy fucking shit factor, I'm gonna give this bike a 14.7. It knocked my socks off for sure. Yep, still not there. I would like to mention real quick that this bike is not going to be for everybody. If you're a guy who knows what you're doing, you've got a fair amount of seat time under your belt, I think you'll get a lot out of the SR. But if you're more of a newbie, I would say give this one a skip. Go get the 2.0, a used 2.0, or a brand new 3.0. That's a lot better for less experienced guys, and you'll still have plenty of power to keep you entertained. Range on this bike is fairly decent. I didn't do a whole lot of range testing with it, but if you want to get good range, avoid race mode altogether, man. If you put it in race mode and do full throttle riding like I was doing, that thing just plummets, it falls out the window. Personally, man, I probably just avoid race mode altogether. It just sucks way too much out of the battery. Unless you really just want to blow somebody away in a straight line, I would just avoid it altogether. Eco and especially sport mode still feel like a handful, and you're not going to just drain the battery within 5 minutes of using it, so that's my recommendation. I also want to point out that this bike did 70 miles an hour with a 58 tooth sprocket on it. So if you go down like a 45 or a 38, this thing can probably go way faster than 70. I was also a big fan of the ergonomics. The bike felt very comfortable to ride for long periods of time. The handlebars were nice and high. The foot pegs were nice and low. Had tons of feeling in the front end. It's definitely a lot more comfortable to ride for me than the Altis Sigma was. Overall, that bike felt a bit cramped. Although I would like to mention that I feel both the SR and the Sigma could have benefited a lot from being bigger bikes. Now, having a taller fork in the front and a longer swing arm at the back would really mitigate the SR's spontaneous wheelie factor factor, which was a big problem with the bike. It's fun and it's crazy, but it can make more technical riding a little more difficult. A longer swing arm overall makes the bike a bit more stable. I'm not saying a massive one, but just a 2-inch difference or so would just make it a bit easier to ride and more stable to ride, especially when it comes to loose, dry dirt like I was riding in. And finally, build quality is another big pro to the Eride. I mean, as usual, Eride does a great job with the components on the bike. They always feel solid and strong. I know a lot of these bikes are made in the same factories, but Erides always just feel they have that extra quality touch on them, and it's nice to see that it's still there in the SR. Yeah, alright then, let's talk some cons, talk some shit. Obviously, my main bitch about this bike was that throttle, and while I was able to adjust it to a point where I was a lot happier with it, it's still not perfect. It's still gonna need some work. Overall, I felt the power just came on a bit too suddenly when you did get to that power band. It's kind of like riding an old two-stroke in a way, which does make it fun, but when it comes to doing more technical riding and just riding smoother all around, you know, I would like to see some more adjustment on that side of things, for sure. Obviously, I've already brought this up to Eride, and they've said to me that they are working on it, and I believe them because Eride is usually pretty good at taking criticism and turning the bikes around in a pretty short amount of time, so it'd be good to see what they come up with. I also wasn't a big fan of the suspension. I found it to be a little too firm for me. I'm not a heavy dude, I'm like 155 pounds, but I did find it to be a bit firm. Granted, I didn't adjust it a whole lot. I probably should have done that before complaining about it. Honestly, man, I feel like they should just get a bigger frame, better quality components, and just make a $6,500 Eride Pro SS kind of like the Soren Ultra B. Make it bigger, put some better suspension on there. It already has all the power. You might as well just go to that next level, at least in my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. But apart from that, man, like I mentioned, I don't think this bike is going to be for everybody. If you're a guy who knows what you're doing, you will have a lot of fun with this thing. Even for myself, man, I got back after my first time riding this bike, plugged it in, and thought, like, I gotta get back on the track. I gotta get some more seat time. I'm nowhere near a good enough rider to get the most out of this bike, and yeah, I need to do some more riding for sure. The bike humbled me. Overall, the Eride Pro SR was a riot to ride. I had such a good time with the thing. I didn't want to give it back, and I've already given them all my critiques and feedback on the bike, and knowing them, they're gonna turn the bike around in a pretty short amount of time, hopefully. But yeah, solid effort, great bike. I had a lot of fun with it.